Well, if you're just tuning in, the guest is Luleen Anderson, and the book that we have here on the show is The Knack of a Happy Life. So what are some of the keys to happiness?
Well, happiness is a very thriving business these days. Everybody seems to be looking for it. You can Google happiness and get that. I think that that's what everybody's looking for. Once you get beyond food, clothing, shelter, I think so many of us look for happiness, but we look in the wrong places. We look in terms of things and possessions. So for me, happiness is not a fleeting, giggly, ha-ha moment.
Sure.
It's peace, joy, serenity, a longer lasting thing that we come to even in spite of suffering and grief and loss.
Well, we were talking just before we came on air about Maslow's hierarchy, and
Yeah.
he starts out with the fundamental things like if you're not eating well and sleeping well, if your life is just very stressful, then those are the primary needs that need to be met first.
Right.
Then things like friendship, professional fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment, some of these things that you're talking about here are really crucial to that.
It's a lifelong process learning this.
So as a clinical psychologist, do you begin to see patterns in dysfunctional and unhappy lives? Are there generally traits that you have seen over and over and over where you say, well, that's what needs to be in order here?
Well, I think all of us, I think it's an inborn trait that we're born with that ability, that bent, that possibility, and that our experiences either encourage it or discourage it. If a bulb is planted, its nature is to break through. If we put a brick on it, we have thwarted that. So I see a lot of people who've had the bricks put on their lives by environment. And my job sometimes to help them get the brick off. Sometimes they put the brick on themselves, sometimes it was there earlier. But I think that one of the keys is the concept of community, of belonging, because especially around depression and suicide, the hallmarks are withdrawal and isolation. And all of us need a community, a context in which we say, I'm here. And people who are depressed and suicidal, for instance, don't feel or experience community. And so if you're working with people who are in that state, one of the critical issues is how to surround them with support.
Is there ever an opportunity where there's a healthy withdrawal, a time to recharge the batteries and to...
Absolutely. I think we have to do that as well. It's really an issue of balance. People who are introverted need more alone time to recharge their batteries. People who are extroverted seem to need less of that. The question is whether or not it comforts you, whether or not it revitalizes you, whether or not the alone time energizes you and recharges you, or whether you just slip further down that rabbit hole. Because people who are depressed and suicidal don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. It's quite different from you or me saying, I've got to go close the door to my room and read for an hour. And for someone to feel like they haven't left.
Well, one of the most challenging things in my own life, I can always talk about my own life a little bit to draw on from that, but there was a period after I graduated where I really had to figure out, if we could bring up the camera over here, that would be great. I had to figure out when I had graduated what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew that I was capable of, great things and doing things, but there was several months where I was really, I went out on my own, and I had a couple of family, but that was a really tough time. But the goal, I think the key was the goal during that period was to first finish a novel. That was one of the things I wanted to do. And to really figure out why I'm here. And I think there's a difference in the mindset going into it.
Well, first of all, it's voluntary on your part. You made the decision and you had a reason for doing it. And I think all of us need to do that. The parable that we have for this is the prodigal son, you know, who left, squandered his inheritance. What does the scripture say? Came to himself. And that's what all of us have to do, is to come to ourselves, as I said, with the capital F, and come back and be able then to know who you are and what your gifts and talents are. It's not like a vaccination. You don't just get that one time and you've got it. It's a relearning. We learn this throughout life, and if we're flexible, make adjustments. But you come away from that, it seems to me, having a direction. Well, and not knowing how it's going to play out if we're not too wed to the outcome.
And you used the phrase developmental.
Yes.
I've begun to think of it very similarly. I think we're probably talking about the same thing. As a construction, you build good things in your life. It's a wife, a child, a job, professional fulfillment, daily meditation, if that's your thing.
Whatever is your,
to strengthen you. And you just get stronger and stronger.
You see it as a learning process. I think like a good metaphor is a classroom. Some days you're the student, some days you're the teacher, some days you show up having done your homework, some days you feel like you need to look over somebody else's shoulder. But it's different each day, and we grow and change and are different each day if we're lucky.
Well, I can't say thank you enough, Luleen, for being on the show today.
You.
I'm Stacey Cochran. For all of us here at The Artist Craft, I thank you for tuning in. The book is The Knack of a Happy Life, The Knack of a Happy Life, and it is available at retailers all around the country. For all of us here at RTN Channel 10 and The Artist Craft, thank you for tuning in. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
I think we could have probably filled an hour easily.
It would have been fun. It would have been fun. Nice job.
Wait to read the book.